Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the AI-driven Enterprise Podcast. I'm your host, Arvind Rajan from Astute Business Solutions, and I'm excited to have Mayank Singh, Senior Manager of Financial Systems at Chaucer Underwriting Services. Mayank and I have worked together for the past 5 years now on their PeopleSoft applications running on Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, and we've had a chance to collaborate and talk about various topics related to ERP and modernization. And I thought Mayank's perspective on AI would be a good one for all of us to listen to and comment on. Mayank, welcome to the show.
Hey, Arvind, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to have this conversation with you.
Why don't we start by you describing just your journey through finance and technology? I know you are someone who has a passion for learning. You've been doing degrees, additional learning on the side. You've been doing certification courses to supplement your knowledge, and you have that drive that which I really like. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and what that has been like and what that now means in this new world of AI, where even the way we learn is changing?
Yeah, no problem. You're right, Arvind. I'm deeply interested in new technologies. But let me start with where I work currently. So I work at Chaucer Underwriting, which is an insurance company based out of London, where I manage the core financial systems. PeopleSoft ERP is our core financial system. And we've got a few other systems, the accounting rules engine and the usual finance systems that are pretty much there in a mid to large size company. Worked here for 8 years, managing their systems, processes, and generally making sure that they're keeping the lights on, making sure the finance department are able to do a successful close. And before Chaucer, I was working for various consultancies and also freelancing, implementing, doing finance transformations with a particular focus on ERP implementations. And I basically started out after graduation and doing a master's in business management. I started out as an accountant for about 4 years or so. And then a lot of my accountant friends were jumping to ERP implementations. At the time, SAP was quite hot. This was about the year 2000. And I decided to jump too. And that's how I moved to IT. So since then, I've been working, implementing finance systems for various organizations. As I said, I'm deeply interested in new technologies, always upgrading my sales skill sets. As part of that, like 6 to 7 years ago, I became interested in cryptocurrency and blockchain technologies. And I was so interested that I decided to do a master's in that. I ended up doing that just to learn basically what it was all about. At the time, the promise was that it was going to change everything that we do. Unfortunately, it hasn't lived up to that promise, but I can see that happening now with regulation, mainly in the United States, kicking in, supporting stable coins and tokenization of equities and funds. That blockchain technology is going to be the technology underlying all of that, and also for remittances worldwide. And coming on to AI, obviously that's the hottest new technology. That sparked my interest about 3 years ago or so, about the time when OpenAI came up with their first model. And the promise of that obviously seemed immense at the time. It took a few years before subsequent models were being released one after the other, and a few new companies joined. But it's only in the last year or so where I got deeply interested, because as the model started becoming more capable, and I started reading about some companies starting to adopt it. Salesforce is a good example, where they even are publicly announcing adoption of these AI technology. That's when I started taking it really seriously and started exploring how can I use it in my personal life and how can I use it at my workplace to improve processes and operations in finance. So when you invited me, I was extremely excited to have this conversation with you.
Excellent, Mayank. So I think there's a lot in your background, which I like. The first thing I want to point out is that having that business background in accounting and finance and then coming into ERP, I think gives you a different perspective than somebody who, say, comes from a straight technology background and goes into ERP, right? Because business process understanding and then adding the technology skill set on top of that, I think is always better than just a pure technical skill set. Now, that's more relevant in the AI world because although there's a lot of focus on the large AI tech companies, right? The model builders, the platform builders, the consulting companies that are building agentic AI frameworks, there's obviously a lot of focus on them. They're in the spotlight. But when it comes to adoption in the enterprise, i.e., in customer environments like Chaucer, in large insurance companies, large healthcare companies, what matters is not so much what technology we're going to use, but what problem you're going to solve. So someone in your position having that business process expertise in finance and accounting, I think you might have some thoughts on where the pain points may be, not only in your organization, but speaking generally about finance and accounting. The larger the company, the larger the volume of data, the more integrations you have, more people involved. So if you were to point out maybe one or two or three areas where in finance and accounting you think AI could have an impact, what would those be?
Yeah, certainly. I think you're right. Like with any organization in finance, in our organization, we have many challenges, but I can talk about two or three of them which come to mind. In finance, what is important is data. We need clean data and we need robust controls and we need evidence to be able to supply the evidence to the auditors and to other senior stakeholders in the organization. Those three things at the moment, it's not perfect, obviously, and we are always looking for how technology can be an enabler to help us get clean data, more robust controls, and better evidence in terms of like audit trails and things like that. So coming to the challenges that we have currently, one is we're looking to get a single source of truth for our data. So at the moment, we've got our policy administration systems wherein the policies, premiums, claims flow in through our policy administration systems into our data warehouse. And then from there, it flows through into our accounting rules engine, which then transform that data into financial information. At the point at which it enters the data warehouse, that's a resting point for the data. It gets transformed there. And then several different teams take that data and use it, modify that to create for their own purpose, not just finance, for other teams as well, actuaries and compliance and other teams take that data. And along the way, that data gets modified and it gets presented and it ends up in a different form. And then if finance then wants to reconcile what they have with what the actuaries have and what business partnering have, many times it doesn't reconcile and we are not able to trace how's the data ended up here. What's the data lineage? That was the word I was looking for. So we end up with having multiple data stores, multiple masters as well here. So in the main data warehouse that we have, there is a one master mapping that applies to the entire organization. But then the data, when it flows through to our accounting rules engine, which is the system, there a copy of that master data gets created. So we have to maintain two masters. Data also gets transformed at that level. When issues come up, it's very hard to troubleshoot where exactly the issue might have occurred because now there are two data stores. There's a copy of the original data from the data warehouse into this accounting rules engine. So in an ideal world, we would like to have one single source of truth and let that be the data warehouse and one master data. So that's where the concept of clean data and single source of truth comes in. And then data transformation, while it happens, everybody agreeing on some standards or common accounting policies based on which the transformation will happen in various teams who eventually end up talking to each other. So yeah, that's data. And then there's obviously process and controls. Process is not well defined. It's sitting in different silos where people work. The process is just sitting there and nobody's quite sure how it actually works in a different part of the company. And it doesn't really flow naturally. So yeah, data and process, those are the two things I think form the kind of foundation of everything else that we do. And if those are not right, then obviously you'll have a problem. I'm just interested to see or hear how AI-driven systems or how the AI layer or the intelligence layer, as they call it, how that can help resolve some of these issues.
Yeah, those are important points because in my conversation with Jim Barry from Stifel Financial Corporation, we spoke about something similar. And the gist of it was with AI, just like in any other previous technology, it is junk in, junk out. So if you feed it bad data, it's going to train and understand your good data as well as the bad data, including duplicates, and it's going to process that and then act on it accordingly, because it is not going to automatically make decisions. We are not at AGI yet, right? So it's not going to automatically make decisions on your data and understand what's good versus what's bad. So data governance is actually one of the first steps for a lot of customers if they have data quality issues. And data governance does not just address data quality, but data transfer and data security and controls, as you mentioned. We just went through our annual SOC 2 Type 2 audit. So we all know what that process is like. Sometimes it's painful, but if you have good controls, if you have good evidences, and if you have good documentation, and you know what the scope of your audit is, then I think it makes things a little easier. It's never easy, but it makes it easier. Now, here's what we're seeing in the AI world that can potentially address some of these challenges. Data cleaning or data quality management in the past has been addressed with MDM tools, master data management tools. And there are lots of companies who specialize in that. Oracle is one of them. Informatica was another one that was always at the top of the leaderboard on that category. But today with AI, specifically with machine learning, what you can do is you can feed it a large data set, and you can use one of many existing or predefined algorithms, and you can ask it to sort through your data and identify inconsistencies, duplicates, or mismatches based on rules, of course, that you would have to program, i.e. instruct the AI model on how you want it to interpret data. Is that going to be fully automated? Probably not. But if you can take away 70 or 80% of the manual work that goes into data cleanup and just use AI tools for that, and AI, of course, is generative AI, it's machine learning, it's agentic AI. There are many flavors of that now. So that's something that we are seeing come up as a need with many of our customers. And then, of course, there's this problem solving for manual processes or processes that have too many handoffs, and then there are bottlenecks or choke points where the first two steps may be very smooth, but in the third and fourth steps, it really slows down. So that's where we think agentic AI, with managing the workflow and moving it in a timely manner from one step to the other, and maybe in some cases also automating some steps, where today it's a manual process, but it could actually be automated. We think agentic AI could play a big role. Now, Mike, one of the things that is an important process across the board, regardless of industry in finance, is the close process. And this is something that is very intensive. There's data coming in from different data sources, subledgers that have to be reconciled. And oftentimes, there's this pressure on the finance organization to finish the close process by a certain date. Do you think that could be an area where AI could add value?
Certainly, I think so. You very rightly said. In my role, especially, one of my key goals is to make sure all the systems are performant and functioning well so that we can ensure a successful close for finance, who is our main customer. And there is a lot of focus within the finance organization because we do quarterly closes for about 1.5 month period. Finance is very busy trying to extract information. Most of the time, the information is flowing automatically from various systems, various finance systems into the general ledger. But we are also extracting information manually sometimes from other sources and creating also manual journals to input that information into the general ledger. So there is a lot of time being spent doing these manual journals. So there could be a lot of time savings there, automation of that. Data cleanup is another thing, bad data flowing in, because one of the issues which I think worth mentioning here is that during the finance close process, a lot of the failures can be traced to bad data that has been entered upstream. And at finance, we are unfortunately recipients. So we are absolutely downstream in the entire chain, and we end up receiving, whether it's bad mappings or unexpected data that then flows through into finance. And then it's very hard to troubleshoot and trace back to where did the data come from, because who should we contact to get it fixed at source? Otherwise, we'll have to do a manual journal again to make an adjustment because we are so rushed. It's a very compressed timescale. So that's one area. Maybe AI could help us get the full picture of how actually this particular data subset flowed through the various layers of the systems. And also the other thing with the finance close is that we are always looking to make small incremental changes in the close process to gain some time so that we can shorten the close, because there is pressure on us to close the books as soon as we can. The cycle is shortening nearly every few quarters or so because there's more regulation that's kicking in. So we have to produce more reporting every year. So there's always a pressure to close books as quickly as possible. And due to the increasing complexity of new systems, new processes entering the workspace, we are not able to do that. So we are always trying to catch up on, oh, we've got one new thing to do now this quarter. People are having to work overtime because I think that's where maybe AI can help us close books on time.
Yeah, there's tremendous potential, isn't it? Because if you think about just the manual journal entries that you are having to create, I'm sure this is the case for most of our customers, if not all of them, in the close process. I don't think anybody that I have met has said that they have 100% automation across the close process. But where AI can add value is it can learn from the previous close processes and continue to learn from every new close process, identify these manual efforts, and maybe provide some level of automation for that. Now, automation itself, as we know, is not new. There have been so many attempts at automation over the past many years and decades, and they've taken different forms. We all know about workflow automation. Then there was this wave of robotic process automation, RPA, which was supposed to be all and end all of automation. And now we find that RPA is also being disrupted by AI.
Yes.
The big advantage that we have with AI, or the promise of AI-based automation, is not only can it do tasks that you can ask RPA to do. RPA is robotic. So you say, I'm going to train you to do these 10 things, step 1 through step 10, consistently over and over again. And that's all you're going to do. So that bot that you design is going to do that over and over again consistently. And the benefit is, of course, speed, no human intervention, reduction of errors, better accuracy, etc. What RPA cannot do is it cannot stop at one of these steps and reason based on the data that's available in that step. AI can do that. Because it has reasoning capability, now at every step, or at the step that it requires reasoning, we can ask the agent to say, when it comes to this condition, you have the ability to reason and take an action based on what's in that step for that particular iteration. Now, that level of control, I think, allows us to be more automated. Whereas if you had a robot that only did one thing, and if you threw a variation at it, the robot would fail. AI has the promise of doing that, plus also reasoning with the data. And of course, all of this is easier said than done. It's not like there's a pre-built solution that you can plug in. It'll work one way for an insurance company, another way for a healthcare company, and a third way for a manufacturing company. But the tool sets and the services are available. They're evolving at a rapid pace with more and more capabilities coming up. So I think the promise is certainly there. And the ones who take early steps and start adopting these in small increments, I think they're the ones who are going to be successful in the long run. So definitely a lot to look forward to. One of the things that we're thinking about doing, because this data problem is something that we see not just in finance, but we see that in HR, we see that in manufacturing, in the order to cash process, procure to pay process. So one of the things that we are thinking about doing is building agents that are data stewards that track the flow of information. So in the case of financial close, from the source to the destination. And along the way, not only track that data, but also log the inputs and outputs of every step. So now you have a trail of information that you can then go and ask the steward, which is an AI agent, and say, I have a problem with this journal entry. I need to track the source of this. Tell me what this is. And it can look at all of the logs it's been creating, and it can just provide a simple natural language interface where you can ask the question and it'll say, it came from this subledger, this is the department or person who entered that data, or this is the integration point through which we received that data. And that might simplify things to a certain extent. Like I said, the possibilities are endless. And I, for one, I'm excited about where this could take us, where it could take our customers, and how it could benefit them.
A question came to mind while you were talking about that aspect was like you talked about AI being able to track like each transaction through the financial flow, and then we can interrogate it if we run into an issue. Do you think interrogation or a tracking of each transaction might cause a performance issue? Or I don't know how that infrastructure layer is going to be integrated with ERP systems or the other financial systems, and whether it's going to cause an additional overhead on the infrastructure infrastructure because it's trying to track everything through their systems?
I think that's a really important question you bring up, man, because anytime you add an auditing layer on top of an enterprise application, we would expect there to be some latency, some performance hit. But with AI, what we can do is, when this new buzz phrase that I learned just last week, it's called a sidecar solution. So it does not have to sit directly on top of your ERP. So it sits adjacent to your ERP, but it connects to your ERP using these AI agents. Secure connections, of course, authenticated and authorized, because this is finance data. We want to keep it sovereign. We want to keep it protected. And then it just monitors the transaction and takes that and logs it in a separate system. Now, can it be done in the same system? Of course, it can be, but we don't have to impose AI requirements on existing systems. For example, customers may not be ready to upgrade their database and their middleware layers and integration layers to support AI because there may be other constraints on those. So at the same time, you can have the benefit of AI with the sidecar solution. So it can sit adjacent to your PeopleSoft environment, adjacent to the sources of information that are providing the subledger details. And it can continue to log that, and it can provide a natural language interface that you can use during the close process. So it can probably evolve into a close assistant, into some sort of a portal-like view where it has a feed from PeopleSoft, from various other sources, and now it knows what transactions are flowing through the system so that, as you said, you can interrogate or ask questions of that data. I think the jury is still out on cost and performance. Until we start seeing some larger scale implementations and adoptions, we will not know for sure. But computing and storage and memory have been improving at a tremendous pace year on year. So we know that's not going to stop. It's going to get better with every new release of hardware and software. So that's always there as an advantage. AI models are getting more efficient. By some estimates, the token cost of AI is reducing 20x year on year. So what costed me $1,000 a year for a set of tokens to do some analysis is probably going to cost me 20% less this year. That's the forecast over the last 3 years, or the trend, I should say. And that's good for customers because the more these models evolve, I think they're also not only increasing their capability, but they're also being more cost efficient. And they're building more guardrails. Companies like Claude are leaders in that space in having their security initiatives, and they talk about it openly, they blog about it, they implement that into their models as well. So that's a good sign for customers that these model providers are not just interested in consuming data and spitting it out, they're also thinking about guardrails and security.
Interesting. So we already have Microsoft Copilot at Chaucer, and we've had it for a year, I think. And I think nearly everyone I know has started using it. I think the main use case is being in the system.
Notes.
Meeting notes, taking the minutes of the meeting and actions from the meeting, but wouldn't want to degrade the value of that. That's a huge benefit, actually. I now have the Copilot on for all my meetings. Automatically, it's on. And it's a huge help for someone like me who's a manager and has to follow up on action items. So it's a huge time saver for me. But I wanted to do more with AI rather than just taking meeting notes and summarizing emails and documents and searching through documentation in the company. That's been hugely helpful. But I was thinking, how can we make use of the new AI tools that are coming out now, and what would be the best way to start exploring it within finance? What are other companies doing? Like, how are they approaching it? What's a safe way to do a proof of concept or a pilot within the company with your existing data set? Safety and security as is very important for financial data. So how can we start exploring it in a safe way?
I think there are a few things you could try out based on just experience with recent customer projects. What I feel is that Chaucer has an advantage. You are already running your enterprise application, PeopleSoft Financials, on cloud infrastructure, on OCI. And these AI solutions are also in the same cloud infrastructure. So you have adjacency and you have benefits where latency description does not have to be a problem. The second thing that AI in general has evolved into is you don't have to move the data out of your ERP system for AI to work. AI has the ability to bring the AI capability to your data wherever your data is. So from a data sovereignty standpoint and data protection standpoint, I think that's a good sign because now through integration, we can have AI connect to either a specific set of tables or views or a schema within the database, and we can enforce some granular security measures so that AI is not like a runaway train. It just takes your data and does whatever it wants. So those are, I would say, the fundamental building blocks. On top of that, I think in the initial few years with AI, everybody's been focused on natural language search, right? Let's throw our data into AI, ask AI to understand it, and let's search on that data. Now, that's not a bad thing per se, but then it's limited because once you search, you may want to do many other tasks based on the output of that search. So how do you get AI to actually even do some of those tasks? So let's say you're processing a document and that document now requires an approval step, or it requires somebody else in the department to take action on it, maybe edit something inside the document. So that's where we think agentic AI is going to play a role. So combining agentic AI with features like natural language search will allow you to take context sensitive action based on that search outcome. So you search for a particular phrase or a particular style of risk or something like that in a document. And based on the outcome, if the agent could suggest a task that you would otherwise do manually or you would assign manually, just take the example of meeting minutes, right? So Copilot, Zoom, a lot of these tools now have AI companions built in. Not only does it take meeting minutes, but it's getting better at identifying which participant said what in the meeting. And it also captures action items. Now, but what if the action item could actually be integrated into a task management system? It could create a follow-up appointment in your calendar. That's where we think AI agents can then take that data and then build on that next set of tasks, automate those tasks, follow up, maybe track that, throw that into SharePoint, throw that into a Microsoft project, whatever the endpoint may be. So I think we have to continue following that process. One of the ways we think that customers can probably synthesize this or maybe visualize this end to end before they synthesize it is to do what I like to call a day in the life of workshop, right? So you can take a particular business function and in that workshop, maybe one of the business analysts or specialists who's in that function comes in and just describes everything that they do from start to finish for that particular transaction or that particular line of work. And then we can break it down and understand where are the manual touch points, where are the handoffs, where are the inefficiencies in the process. Using that as a map, we can start identifying areas where AI can add value. That's a good starting point.
That sounds reasonable. I would like to hear your experience from when speaking to your customers or what you're hearing in the marketplace or at conferences when you go. Like, how's the adoption trend for AI in enterprises? Is that taking off now, or is it happening mostly in the US and probably not so much in the UK? Or what's your experience been?
I think the level of interest in the enterprise, setting aside the consumer side of AI, right? You and I personally going into Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini and asking questions, building our travel plans, general knowledge, all of those kinds of things. Putting that aside and focusing on core enterprise, large companies, back office applications, finance, procurement, supply chain. The level of interest has really gone up exponentially in the last 12 to 18 months. And the indication for me and Astute Business Solutions is how many inquiries we're getting from customers where they want to have a conversation about what they can do with AI. Where should they start with AI? What are some problems that other customers are solving, like you asked? Procure to pay automation seems to be the need of the hour, so to speak. The larger the company, especially in areas in manufacturing, financial services, in healthcare, in government, big volumes of invoices, expense receipts, supplier contracts, sourcing agreements, all of these things are largely manual. There have been third-party applications and OCR solutions and others that customers have tried, but they have not been that efficient. The promise has been made, but I don't think they've delivered on that promise. So I think they want to take a fresh look at that with AI. And analysts like Gartner have said that procure-to-pay automation, specifically invoice automation and contracts automation, are the most likely to succeed based on the surveys that they have done with customers. We're working with a large healthcare customer here in the US where they want AI agents specifically for general ledger that can do anomaly detection for them. So the agent is continuously monitoring journals and building patterns so that it knows that typically the journals are of this type, this combination, this amount range. And all of a sudden, if somebody puts in $1 million journal entry, something stands out. So AI will immediately flag that. It will not take action right away, but it'll at least flag that and bring a human in the loop so that somebody's aware that this sort of entry has been made. So that's one use case that has come up. Invoice automation is something that several customers have already implemented with us. Now some customers are looking for supplier automation. So suppliers having more AI self-service capabilities. Instead of calling the accounts payable department over and over again and saying, where's my invoice? When am I getting paid? They can have complete visibility into the invoice process, the payment process, through AI, securely, of course, and not just throwing data out in the public internet. We don't want that. On the document processing side, we're working with a large research institution where they have hundreds of thousands of research documents. So if they want to put together a new grant proposal for, let's say, something to do with genomic research, then rather than building that proposal from scratch, they want to be able to ask AI to comb through similar proposals that it has submitted in the past and bring in elements of that so that maybe 50-60% of the work is done by AI, and then they put in the finishing touches. Wherever there's volume, wherever there are large documents, wherever there are large data sets, whether those are ERP data sources or document data sources, I think there's potential for AI to come in and add a lot of business value.
The headlines seem to be in the press that AI is going to cause a lot of job losses and a lot of disruption. A lot of these SaaS companies, their stock prices have tanked. And I don't know how much truth there is to it, because people are just panicking that all these ERP systems or business analytics software companies, they're going to go out of business. But just listening to various experts talk about what's probably going to happen is, I think these ERP systems or EPM systems or other financial systems, I think they are going to still be there because they do a very valuable thing, is that they aggregate data and create structured data. Right? What AI does, it can exist as an intelligence layer, consuming that structured data and then producing intelligent reports based on that, intelligent analytics and reporting. Do you think that AI is going to get rid of ERP or other legacy systems, or is it just going to be a value add?
That's an important question, but I don't think there's a straightforward answer yet. One thing is true, that AI is causing disruptions in SaaS, in legacy ERP, to the extent where customers are now starting to ask questions on, why is this not built into my platform already? Why is this an afterthought? Because some companies are reacting to this AI disruption. The smarter ones identified the trend ahead of time and they started embedding this into their core application stack. The ones who are reacting, I think, will find it hard to keep up. As with every major disruption cycle, we went through the boom and bust of the dot-com era, then there was the mobile revolution and the cloud revolution or transformation or disruption, and now it's AI. In all of this, there'll be a shakeout. Some companies will lose, some companies will win, but new companies will come up that were not in the scene, and they will take advantage of these new technologies. The fast movers, I think, are the ones who are going to be successful with AI. It remains to be seen. Definitely, it's disrupting the equilibrium, and companies are being forced to do something with AI. In the past, there were other disruptions where they could say, oh, maybe this is not going to affect my business, so I don't have to worry about it. I think AI is going to be pervasive, where everybody has to take a look at it on the personal front, in their day-to-day jobs, and from a career standpoint as well. This is soon becoming a must-have skill for all professionals across all industries. So it remains to be seen. With a disruption like this, there are always the doomsayers and the people who are predicting that robots are going to take over the world and things like that. But I think while AI may cause some job loss, again, there's no hard data or evidence about any of this yet. There's just predictions. One thing we know for sure is these sorts of disruptions also create entirely new job categories. So it's a matter of retooling ourselves and adapting to that new demand that the workforce has. And I think people will come up with that. 20 years ago, we did not have people focusing on cloud and all of these other technologies that everybody takes for granted today. And people have adapted, new skills have been created, new jobs have been created. I think the same thing will happen with AI.
I think I agree. There's still going to be a human in the loop, especially with regulated industries like medicine or law or insurance. I think we'll still need that human approval layer because you need accountability.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what's in store for us.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayank. It was a pleasure having you on the podcast. Hope to have you back again at some
Thank
other time
you.
in the future. Maybe we'll talk about an AI implementation at that time. But thank you for your time, and we'll keep in touch.
Thank you, Arvind. It was a pleasure.
Welcome.